Federal Communications Commission reaffirming a 2022 decision to deny Elon Musk's Starlink internet service nearly $900 million in rural broadband subsidies earlier this week. The two Republican commissioners on the five-member FCC dissenting from the decision. Senior Republican FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr writing this in his dissent. Quote, after Elon Musk acquired Twitter and used it to voice his own political and ideological views without filter, President Biden gave federal agencies a green light to go after him. Today, the FCC adds itself to the growing list of administrative agencies that are taking action against Elon Musk's businesses. Joining me right now is the man himself. He is senior Republican on the FCC Commission, Brendan Carr. And Brendan Carr, it's great to see you this morning. We so appreciate you joining us. What's going on there at the FCC? Is this all political?
Yeah, there's a really concerning pattern here. As you just noted, the FCC back in 2020 awarded Elon Musk Starlink almost $1 billion to bring high-speed internet service to over 640,000 rural homes and businesses. These are parts of the country that have had absolutely no internet service at all for far too long, or they've been stuck on copper line internet service up till then. In the FCC just this week, the full commission backtracked and revoked that $1 billion. And I think it fits what the Wall Street Journal has described as really a concerning pattern of regulatory harassment. This decision by the FCC doesn't make a lot of sense at all if you look at it through the lens of the facts or the law or even good policy. But it does make good sense, or at least it makes sense, if you go back to the White House. And last year, President Biden stood behind the podium inside the White House. It was adorned with the presidential seal. And President Biden said that Elon Musk is worth being looked into. A reporter said, how? And President Biden looked down and said, there's lots of ways. And there certainly are. Since then, we've seen the Department of Justice, the FAA, the Federal Trade Commission, the NLRB, even the Fish and Wildlife Service opening investigations into Elon Musk. And I think the pattern here fits, again, what the Wall Street Journal said, with this nothing more than regulatory harassment.
Yeah, let's look at the Journal's op-ed this morning, and that is titled, "The FCC Ambushes Musk's Starlink." And that's exactly what they write. Add the Federal Communications Commission to the gang of Biden regulators targeting Elon Musk. On Tuesday, the agency invoked dubious grounds to scrap funding for his Starlink satellite service. It's not even like he missed any deadlines, right? They're actually moving the goalposts and saying, well, we're going to revoke this money now because we don't believe that he's keeping to his targets.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We at the FCC didn't have any obligation imposed on Elon Musk or Starlink until the end of 2025. That was the first point in time in which they provide any service at all to these 640,000 people. And yet, to your point, the FCC has moved up the goalpost and said, because you're not providing that service today, even though they had no reason to be providing the service today, we are going to yank back all of this funding. And again, remember that, the administrative state is very powerful right now in D.C., and it's been controlled by Democrats for approaching 12 of the last 16 years. And what's simply not credible about this FCC decision is, as you noted, on the one hand, we're saying, we have some doubts about this. It's not necessarily a reliable technology. But that's belied by the fact that the U.S. government is entering into multi-million-dollar contracts with Elon Musk, with Starlink, for high-speed connectivity when it matters the most, for military operations and otherwise. So it simply isn't credible for the FCC to be claiming that they have concerns about this technology when other components of the federal government are leaning in so heavily. And look, the real loser here is going to be rural America. Elon Musk is going to be fine. The $900 million isn't that big a deal to him. But we had millions of Americans that were guaranteed to get high-speed service that now the FCC has taken that commitment, vaporized it, and replace it with nothing. And look, if the federal government ever does come back and make another commitment to serve these rural communities, it's going to cost us a lot more money. Instead of $900 million, my math shows that to get fiber there, for instance, it's going to cost north of $3 billion. So it really doesn't make sense on the merits here.
That's unbelievable. And the FCC has never before required a funding recipient to meet its obligations years earlier. But what you just said is really the most important. You're looking at politics driving decisions, and it's actually hurting citizens. Americans in rural areas can stick a satellite dish on their home or business that connects with Starlink satellites in Earth's low orbit, writes the Journal. Starlink has more than 5,420 satellites in orbit, which would provide high-speed internet in 14 European countries, and Ukraine has used Starlink terminals to defend against the Russians. So we know that it actually is effective, and now the FCC is taking it the potential to be effective away. A federal judge tentatively ruled yesterday that Elon Musk now must testify again in a Securities and Exchange Commission probe on his Twitter takeover deal. U.S. Magistrate Judge Laurel Beeler rejecting arguments from Musk's attorney that SEC officials did not have the authority to issue these subpoenas, saying the agency has broad investigative powers. Beeler told both sides to find when and where Musk would sit for another 4-hour deposition, or she would issue an order for his testimony early next year, Commissioner. I mean, look, people are sick and tired of this administration injecting politics in all of these decisions. And I don't know how there's going to be accountability. Tell us what you and your colleagues' dissent are going to mean here.
Well, look, Starlink can take this case now to the D.C. Circuit and they can appeal it. I think there's obviously very clear grounds for overturning this on appeal if they go that route. But look, you could step back and say, well, Elon Musk has a lot of business operations, so it's, not that off that he's had so many run-ins with the government. But look at all these individually. So the NLRB has gone after him for effectively a dress code violation because they made Tesla engineers wear black T-shirts, which actually has an engineering basis. Or look at the Fish and Wildlife Service. They said that after a SpaceX launch, they found a handful of bobwhite quail eggs and some blue land crabs that had been charred. These are the types of things that are being ginned up. And this is a very concerning pattern. Again, it really can't be explained on the merits. I think it can only be explained by drawing a straight line back to President Biden standing behind that podium and giving a very clear green light to the administrative state to go after Elon Musk.
Well, that is really disgusting, and this is one of the reasons that people feel like we're losing our country. I want to thank you so much for your courage in your dissent and standing tall for our democracy. I want to switch gears and ask you about another issue, and that is the propaganda war that we see from these outside adversaries like China. This whole issue around anti-Semitism and these pro-Palestinian protests started on social media on places like TikTok. I spoke with the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, on Sunday Morning Futures last week about the impact that social media is having on the rise of anti-Semitism. I want to get your take on this. Here's what Devin Nunes told me. Watch.
If you go back to, let's just say, October 5th, if you would have done a poll of kids under the age of 25, they probably wouldn't have even known where Palestine is, what it is, definitely wouldn't know what the Gaza Strip is, definitely wouldn't know this chant of from the sea to, that's basically calling for the genocide of the Jewish people. So how did that happen? I think it really happened because of TikTok. I think the Chinese run TikTok. I think that spread violently all through TikTok. And I think that's where a lot of kids all of a sudden became pro-Hamas in this country.
Are you saying that this is another tool for the Chinese Communist Party to undermine America?
Well, look, we've long said that, even back when I was in Congress.
Commissioner, what can you do about this? There's a propaganda war going on, in addition to the man-to-man ground fight right now. And China is our #1 adversary. It's spewing out propaganda and, following our political debates and piling on.
Yeah, there's no question. When you look at TikTok in particular, there's two main threats there. One is surveillance. We know they're taking data on millions and millions of Americans, and it's being accessed and it's accessible from inside China by CCP officials. And the second piece of it, as you talked about there, is foreign influence. We're seeing it very clearly. We saw it ahead of the midterm elections, and we're seeing it right now with showing the data about the direction that people go with perspectives on Israel-Hamas war, for instance, based on being on TikTok. So the government needs to act. And I would encourage Congress to get across the finish line a bill that holds TikTok accountable and requires it to divest all ties back to the CCP. That's probably one of the most important things that we can do here in the coming weeks and months.
Commissioner, I'll be watching, and we so appreciate your time this morning and your courage and leadership. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.